Hey guys, Junj here, and today we'll be discussing how to defeat Ifrit Extreme Mode. Now, this is probably the hardest fight in the game for healers and takes a tremendous amount of team awareness to be successful. Now, Ifrit, similar to Titan, has some of the same skills he had from his hard mode, but most, if not all of them, have been changed just slightly. To even be given the chance to fight Ifrit, you'll need to complete the quest given to you after you defeat Titan Extreme Mode, and have an average item level of 70. I'm going to break down this fight for you phase by phase so you can get a clear understanding about each mechanic and how to deal with them. So, phase 1 will introduce 2 new mechanics to the fight, as well as a few upgraded mechanics you've already seen before. Now, Ifrit will still use Vulcan Burst, and his auto attacks will always do a frontal AoE cone when used, though this doesn't really hit particularly hard. However, when used in combination with Ifrit's Fire Breath attack, it will definitely start to add up. This breath attack is called Incinerate, which now, instead of only doing damage, will also add a stacking debuff to every one hit called Superation. This debuff will increase damage received and lower the target's maximum HP. If Ifrit manages to stack too many debuffs onto one target, this target will start to take too much damage, resulting in their death. The way you deal with this mechanic is to simply tank swap once the current tank reaches between 2 and 4 stacks. Although, I suggest not waiting to swap at 4 stacks because if Ifrit decides to double Incinerate, the tank will more than likely perish to this overwhelming damage. Make sure your off tank is not within range of Ifrit's Incinerate, or you could accidentally get a stack before a swap is required, which will cause a lot of problems later in this fight. One thing to note about Incinerate is that debuff will not stack on the target if the target absorbs all the damage. Meaning, if a tank has Sucker and Stone Skin on and Incinerate hits him but he takes no damage, he will receive no debuff. Unfortunately, Ifrit seems to use this skill at random times, which makes this trick quite difficult to pull off 100% of the time. A new mechanic Ifrit has is a skill known Infernal Howl. Infernal Howl is what makes this fight very difficult on the healers. Ifrit will only target the healers with this skill unless there are no healers to target, then he'll simply choose someone else. But if this happens, you're probably already in too much trouble to recover. This skill will target one of the 2 healers every 25 to 30 seconds. This will have a low initial damage and then place a debuff on the target called Searing Wind, which lasts for approximately 20 seconds. This debuff will cause the target to emit an outward pulse every 5 seconds that will do approximately 2,500 damage to anyone hit and knocking them back just like Vulcan Burst does. This pulse will not hit the person with the debuff, but the radius of this pulse is quite large, so be very careful where you stand. To deal with this pulse, your healers should stand behind the raid and on opposite sides of each other. So if your tank is tanking Ifrit in the north, your healers should be standing in the east and the west of the arena. The reason for this is because Ifrit will switch between the 2 healers when casting Infernal Howl. So if healer 1 is targeted first, then healer 2 will be targeted the next time. This will continue the entire fight, so your healers will always have to be very aware of who has the debuff and how close they are to other members of the raid so they do not accidentally hit them with this pulse. Now, almost immediately after Ifrit picks a target for his Infernal Howl, he'll cast his all too famous Eruptions. Unfortunately, you cannot interrupt these eruptions, so don't even attempt to do this. This eruption will target 3 players and place 1 eruption under each of these targets 3 times. Each eruption will cause approximately 2,600 damage, so make sure you are dodging these properly or you'll die if you're hit by more than 1. Also, make sure you do not run towards your healers when running from these eruptions, or you could potentially kill them and or be hit by their Searing Wind, causing you to die in the process. The easiest and most common way to deal with these eruptions is to have all the DPS, even the ranged DPS, and the off tank stacked directly behind Ifrit, so that once he begins to target players with eruptions, you can simply all move to the south together, avoiding every eruption as a group. Ifrit will continue to use all these skills, and at approximately 80% health, he'll summon his first set of nails. These nails have a new mechanic in which, once destroyed, will explode, causing approximately 650 damage to the entire raid, and giving you a debuff called Vulnerability Up, that lasts for 2 seconds. This makes it impossible to use the Limit Break Meteor on these nails, because if you did, you would all die to the overwhelming amount of damage received by each nail exploding, and because of the Vulnerability Up, which will increase damage you receive per stack. This means you have to destroy each nail individually at an interval of every 2 seconds or more to ensure that the raid does not take too much damage from these explosions. If you do not kill all these nails before Ifrit jumps, he will return and use Hellfire, which will instantly wipe the entire raid, so make sure you're DPSing quickly. Also, do not forget that during the nail phase, Ifrit will still use Incinerate, Vulcan Burst, and Infernal Howl, which means you'll still need a tank swap and make sure your healer with Infernal Howl is not staying near the raid while they kill the nails. The last thing to note about this nail phase is that your off tank will drop a single eruption directly below him after Ifrit casts an Infernal Howl, so make sure he does not accidentally drop it on the raid members DPSing a nail. The way my raid deals with this nail phase is to kill the nails in a clockwise manner and have the tank kill the nail that spawns directly near him. At the same time, if a healer is standing near the final set of nails and is targeted by Infernal Howl, they will call it out and begin to switch sides with the other healer by running through the middle of the room while the DPS stands to the far south as possible to avoid the pulses. Once the healer is safely on the other side, the DPS will continue and finish off the remaining nails. Approximately 45 seconds after these nails appear, Ifrit will jump into the center of the room and use Hellfire, which will do approximately 2,500 damage to the entire raid if all the nails were destroyed. Now, this is where Phase 2 begins. Ifrit will still use every skill we've seen in Phase 1, however, he will now add a few new skills to his arsenal. The first being Radiant Plumes. Right after Ifrit lands, he will swipe the tank once, then use Incinerate. As soon as you see Incinerate go off, you should immediately move to 1 o'clock because moments later, the entire room will be filled with Radiant Plumes and there will only be 2 safe spots to stand in. The first safe spot is at 1 o'clock and the second safe spot is directly diagonal at 7 o'clock. Make sure your healers position themselves near one of these 2 safe areas so they do not die to these plumes. If you're hit by the plumes, you will take massive damage and potentially die, so make sure you're paying attention. Ifrit will not do these plumes again until after his next Hellfire. After Radiant Plumes, Ifrit will choose another healer to cast Infernal Howl on, and then shortly after jump into the air and begin his dashes. There will be 4 Ifrits and they will dash in order in a clockwise manner. Each dash is gigantic and covers 1/3 of the entire room per dash, meaning you can no longer stand in between Ifrits to avoid taking damage. If you are hit by a dash, you will take approximately 2,500 damage, and if you're in the center of an Ifrit dash, it will knock you into the middle of the room, causing you to die to the next dash. The easiest way to deal with these dashes is to run in a clockwise manner around the room while Ifrit dashes. This also goes for the healers in the west and the east of the room. Though it's highly advised you use Sprint as a healer when rotating clockwise or you will be hit too many times and die. After these dashes, Ifrit will land and choose a new healer for Infernal Howl, which means the DPS needs to be stacked behind Ifrit so you can get ready to run to the south to avoid the incoming eruptions. All these mechanics will continue, and once Ifrit reaches 50% health, he will summon the second set of nails. These nails deal the same amount of damage they dealt in Phase 1, as well as the invulnerability up, and Ifrit will still use Incinerate, Infernal Howl, and Eruptions. But this time, there'll be double the amount of nails, and a new stacking debuff mechanic will be introduced called Infernal Fetter. This ability will create a chain between 2 targets, one DPS, and the target who is second on the enemy list, which is generally the off-tank. This chain will cause both targets to deal reduced damage and take damage over time. The further away these 2 targets are from each other, the less damage they'll do, and the more dot damage they will take. The way my raid deals with Infernal Fetter is by having the tank with the chain follow the DPS around the map and help kill the nails. Once a tank swap is needed, the DPS attached to the tank must follow him back to Ifrit so they do not increase the stacks of Fetter. This DPS should attack nails nearby Ifrit until Fetter wears off, and then return back to the DPS group and continue finishing off the remaining nails. While killing these nails, do not forget which healer has Infernal Howl or you may accidentally wipe the raid. Also, make sure to communicate with your raid if you're swapping sides with Infernal Howl on you so everyone can position themselves correctly. One extremely important note to remember during these nail phases is to watch everyone's health pool to ensure that the next nail does not explode and kill them. You may have to stop DPS momentarily until that person receives a heal. You have approximately 70 seconds to kill all these nails before Ifrit once again jumps into the air and into the center of the room to use Hellfire. Welcome to Phase 3, which is quite literally the same as Phase 2, with one exception. The plumes Ifrit produces directly after his first Incinerate will have a new safe spot at 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Right after these plumes, he will use Infernal Howl, and then Eruptions will come shortly after. Do exactly what you did for Phase 2 until Ifrit reaches 20% health, where he'll summon the last set of nails. There will be 13 nails in total, and you'll have 1 minute and 40 seconds to kill all these nails before he uses Hellfire once again. A couple things to know for this nail phase is this. Do not try to burn down Ifrit before the timer runs out, because at approximately 5% health, you can no longer damage him, and he'll quote-unquote enrage and instantly kill the entire raid. Also, do not kill the large nail in the middle of the room until you've killed off the other 12 nails first. Once this is done, make sure your raid has their health topped off before you destroy the large nail, because it will explode, dealing approximately 2,500 to 3,000 damage raid-wide. During this entire nail phase, Ifrit will still use Incinerate, Infernal Fetter, Infernal Howl, and Eruptions, so be prepared to deal with all these mechanics. After destroying all the nails, Ifrit will use Hellfire and Phase 4 will begin. As in the previous 2 phases, Phase 4 is exactly like them. However, the new safe spots for Radiant Plumes is at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. If you can handle all of Ifrit's mechanics up to this point, then congratulations on defeating all the Extreme Primals. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV content. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter where I post about my upcoming content and answer all of your Final Fantasy XIV questions. As always guys, I'll see you next time.